Good evening and welcome to tonight's Hofstra men's lacrosse postgame press conference with head coach Seth Tierney. Coach, give us your thoughts following tonight's game against Syracuse.
Yeah, certainly, disappointed in the final score. Know that they are a very talented team. Like the way we started, obviously. Thought we were locked in, made some plays offensively. They did hit some pipes early, which helped, and that's part of it, but I look at the stats and the shots are pretty even. We did a better job almost doubling them up on ground balls and did a great job at the face-off X. But clearing extra man and turnovers really got us tonight. And so we need to, this was our last dress rehearsal before conference play starts. So we gotta see who's nicked up and put together some game planning for Fairfield on Saturday.
Questions?
Coach, talking about tonight's game, what were some positives you can take away from tonight's game, if there's any?
Did someone pay you to ask me that question? I'm never positive, even when we win. I'm actually angrier when we win. But some positives again. The way we started. Certainly Chase Patterson at the X. Matt Gates stood in there pretty well. I don't know. 12 saves. I thought a couple of guys, did step up. Matt Elder had a big goal for us. The energy was good. The execution and the IQ was not where it was needed to be.
Coach, you started the game earlier, putting a lot of pressure on Joyce Molina, mainly from Daniel Oakes. Then when you get the turnover, you struggle with getting that clear. Was it a lack of focus after getting that ground ball? What came down to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to give them credit. They played hard after turnovers, right? Danny Oakes tried to throw a pass after turning the ball over. It got tipped. Tom Ford got tipped. One of the major stats in basketball is tip passes, right? And it's just a sign of effort and a sign of energy. And they had it in those scenarios. And then we threw a couple away. We got pushed out of bounds. Corey Kale uncharacteristically turned one over, got the stick checked out of his hands when he should be just legging that out. It says we lost, I don't know how many clears, but the way we stat it, it was more than that. And you can't give a Syracuse offense 10 extra possessions and expect to be happy at the press conference. You just can't do that.
Coach, talk about Danny DeSanti, his spinning goal tonight. Coming back, he was originally with the team for the 2020 season, and then he comes back for this year. Just talk about his impact on the field and in the locker room and just in practice with the guys.
I think Danny's older than some of our assistant coaches, right? I mean, he's up there. And it's an unbelievable story, right? Danny goes to West Point. For whatever reason, he doesn't finish. And, I knew Danny when he was a little guy, and his effort and his energy, and he just reminded us of a turnpike guy. And we give him a shot. And the problem is, it was the pandemic. And so he couldn't finish that year. And then he had to work for the military to pay off his bill at West Point. So he missed 2 years. But he asked before the pandemic was decided it was over, he asked if he can come back after working 2 years. So he's 26 years old. Every day he comes out of the locker room and he does some type of prayer, thanking the Lord that he's a lacrosse player and that he's here practicing every day. He doesn't have wide eyes. He just plays because he knows that the end line is coming soon for him, and he just brings out as much fun and energy as one person can. And our guys, directly or indirectly, are seeing that.
Hey Seth, I know the focus is internal on Hofstra. But what did you see from Spallina tonight? Both as a facilitator from X and also his ability to score.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting so old, I gotta put glasses on, right? You know, I think, I think our guy did okay on him. I know he had 4 and 3. I think he had 2 of them were on man up, right? And listen, if you're gonna give Joe Spallina his hands free, you're in trouble. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's a point guard out there. He may not blow past you with speed, but they set picks for his strong hand. They get you to step off just so they're getting his hands free, and they design some things for him. So I'm proud of him. You know, he's had a lot of publicity. He's had a lot of people go after him, and he stands tall every game. You know, and again, you take your hat off. He walked off the field with 7, and he did. You know, I don't know, and I think that our guy, when it was 6-on-6, I think our guy did a pretty good job on him. But he still walked out with 7 points, and he was a difference maker. So, you know, Joey's got a bright career ahead of him.
Coach, what's the focus coming in? You guys only have a couple of days before Fairfield. What's the focus for practice?
Yeah. So I made a promise, I think I broke it, but I made a promise to the guys, win, lose, or draw. We were moving on from this game as soon as the final whistle blew, right? So it wasn't gonna be a celebration if we won, and it wasn't gonna be, you know, devastating if we lost. I broke my promise. It was probably a little devastating up there because I'm such a competitor. But in the lockers, you know, one of the hurt guys, they had Fairfield's scouting report was already in their lockers. We're moving on, and we have to, because the Fairfield game, in a way, a large way, is so much more important. It would be just like conference games for Syracuse or anything like that. There's you know, only a certain amount of ways into postseason, so we had to make sure that we took care of that. We're thankful that we got the game in because weather-wise it wasn't looking great.
In what way did Syracuse's defense change after those first 3 goals you guys scored? How did they, shut you guys down for the rest of the game?
Yeah, they certainly settled in. Some of you may know, some of you may not. You know, Dave Petramalo and I go way back, right? I mean, in 1987 and 1988, we were teammates. 89, teammates at Johns Hopkins. The irony is we were both in one uniform, and Gary Gate, I think Paul Gate might have been here today. They were in another uniform, and the championship game was at College Park, and there was 30,000 people, and it was one of the greatest games ever played. And 3 of us were out there on the sidelines coaching today. If there's anybody that knows Dave Petramalo and his defense, I'm one of the guys that I think could raise his hand. I played against his defense every day for 6 years at Hopkins, and I know what he's about. He certainly doesn't play defense the way he played. He was a guy that could take the ball away from anybody. He was a thief on defense, but he coaches it fundamentally sound. And I know that somebody got hurt on the team, maybe at the Hopkins game, number 30, hurt his foot. But another Hopkins disciple in 35, Billy Dwan's son, went out there and he did a solid job out there. And again, he was pretty vanilla, and they settled in. And they knew the strong hands. They knew the tendencies, and I'm sure Coach Petramalo's got a book of every play we've ran since 1908, and he went through every play during practice. And but with that, still, we had a lot of good looks. Listen, a goalie in there is pretty good too. We faced him last year, and when the defense has a breakdown, there are times that he bails them out.
There are no more questions. This concludes tonight's post-game press conference. Coach, thank you.
Thank you, guys.